I'm Julie Faye-Fan Balzer, your host here on Make It Artsy. Now listen, books enrich us in many ways, and today artist Andrew Thornton is here to actually sculpt a book cover for a favorite book. And Andrew, these book covers are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm super excited about showing this technique because it's a way of creating something completely custom and one of a kind. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick out our page, and I just made these pages, but you can use a book that you already have, or you can cut something down, or if you use blank pages. This will be used to determine the size of your mold. And this mold is a little bit different than a lot of molds than you're probably used to, and that is because it's made of plasticine.
Okay.
And plasticine is a wax-based, oil-based modeling clay.
Can I touch it?
You can touch it.
Oh, it's kind of hard.
A little bit. If you need it to soften up, you can get a heat gun, and that will help soften it up. Before I work with it in depth, I like to use this moisturizer, and this moisturizer creates a barrier, and it also keeps my hands soft. So
I was going to say, it keeps it from getting all over you.
Yeah, so I would just press this out and shape it so that it fits.
I feel like I might have made some ashtrays in school that looked a little bit like this.
Yeah, and so what you would do is take your tool, and I've got a couple different tools, and these are just going to be simple mark making.
Oh, so you're removing some of the plasticine now.
Yeah, and we're just creating grooves and a pattern. So you'd get this ready, and you can make as many designs and shapes. One thing you want to make sure to do is, if you have these little giblets, is to remove them.
Can you reuse them?
Yes, you can reuse them and make as many molds as you like.
So does this permanently harden and at some point it's unusable, or are you saying you can use this, like mush it up and use it over and over again?
You can mush it up and use it as many times as you like.
Oh my gosh, so that means like for any size book, whatever you have, totally economical, you can just make a custom form every time and change it a lot.
Yeah, and you can put initials right in it. You can completely customize it.
Would you have to do that backwards if you were doing text?
If you're going to do it, you don't, yes, you would have to do it backwards, because if you don't, it will be backwards. So that's why we're going to do a nice abstract design, so I don't have to think too hard.
I like that. It's a good theory. It's a good philosophy.
All right, so let's get working on the resin. And before we actually get into the resin, we're going to prepare the mold by using a metallic pigment powder. The metallic pigment powders not only add color, but they also act as a resist, so that the resin doesn't stick. I'm going to be a little bit heavy-handed with the powders because they you don't want to skimp and have it stick.
And will these stick to the resin?
It does, and it embeds into the surface of the resin.
How cool. And is it, are they transparent? Like, am I going to be able to see the resin through it, or is it going to completely obscure the resin behind it?
You can see the resin behind it, but you also, as in with the sample, you'll get a nice little metallic sheen.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, you just don't want to breathe too deeply. These are non-toxic, but whenever you have any particulates in the air, you don't want to...
You want to inhale it in, or you're going to have very colorful blowing of your nose after that.
That's true.
Super shiny.
So this is a 2-part resin. It sets up fairly quickly. So I'm going to mix 2 equal parts. You're going to want to make sure that the meniscus, or the little line at the top created by the surface of the resin or the hardener, is even with the line. As I say, precisely eyeball.
It's precise eyeballing. That's a real thing.
Is it? Wow. So we're going to mix these two until the liquid becomes clear. And this is actually an opaque resin. It's white, but we're going to add a little bit more color, and that's going to help us keep adding color to it.
So even though it's a white resin, it's going to go clear. That's fascinating.
Yep. Once it sets up, then it will start to turn opaque.
So because it's a white resin, if you're adding color, does it mean like if you're adding that a sort of like deep blue or something like that, does that mean that it actually will become like a sky blue because essentially it's mixing with white? Like will that red go pink because you're mixing it with white or not?
Yes, if you add just a little bit of the dye, it will only turn a pale pink. But if you add a lot, it will be completely red. So I'm just going to dump this in. Now you don't want to be too thick because if it's too thick, then you will just have a really heavy book. Since I've got a little bit left over, I always have a little two-part
mold right there that you can go ahead and pour your excess off so you're not wasting anything, which is a great idea. And I know you have one of these that you've already gone ahead and popped out of the molds.
Yep. And this is right here. And we have cleaned it up. I've used a toothbrush and some Dawn dish detergent and a little bit of alcohol. And you can see there's a little bit of the excess of the mold material, but it won't hurt us. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually...
I bet you need this template.
Yep. And we're going to mark it, or since we don't have the marker up here, we're just going to eyeball it. Now this is a little drill.
It's a little drill press, and of course you should obviously be wearing safety glasses and stuff like that when you do it.
Shouldn't I?
It's one of those things that's important.
You can tell I don't do it in my studio, but since we're on
But there you go. So once that's on, you're simply going to pull the handle and you'll have drilled your hole right through your resin. Super duper easy. I love that. It cuts through that just like butter.
Super easy. All right.
So now you're going to go ahead and paint that, right?
Yep. And so you've got a couple different options. I like to start with alcohol inks.
So you're going to go ahead and use some alcohol inks, and you're just spraying them directly on there. I know that you also have some acrylic paints and stuff there. Is there anything you can't use on top of the resin?
No, because you can always go back and seal it. This is a great way of just experimenting and playing, and you can match it to mix the pages of the book. On top, you can go with colored waxes and kind of pick up all the highlights. And yeah.
And do you let it dry in between? If I'm going to put acrylic on here after the alcohol ink or the wax or anything like that, do I let it dry or can I go wet into wet?
You can go wet into wet, but you'll have mixing. I like to do even layers and let them dry in between, and you just get a clearer color.
So cool. Well, let's look at the finished piece that you have here, which I think is absolutely breathtaking and amazing. It's so interesting, and I love the little bunny head too that you made as well.